All right. So, how many of you got an email from me or saw on the Facebook page that we're starting a series today? Raise your hands. Okay, that's like half of you. All right, if you don't know, today I'm really excited because we're starting a new series, and it's called Lost and Found. Lost and Found. Yeah. And it's a 5-week series looking at what it means to find hope, love, and freedom in your life. And I'm really excited about this is because we're actually going to look and go really deep into a chapter of the Bible, and we're going to look at Luke 15. And so if you want to flip there, if you have your Bible with you, if you have your phone, you can download the Bible app. You can just Google it if you want, and it'll come up. But we're going to be looking at Luke 15. And I'm really excited about this because I feel like what God wants to do is, God is all about love. And he's all about you finding love in your life. And the primary way that you receive that love and know what that love is actually through a relationship with him. And through a relationship with God and with Jesus, you can have hope and freedom and love in your life in every area. But sometimes life kind of gets in the way, and we can feel lost sometimes. We can feel a bit confused in what we're supposed to do with our lives, what we're about, what we're called to. We can feel lost in our faith and be like, do I really believe? Do I really think that there's a God? And you can have these questions, and some are really small and some are really big. But this is a series that's going to be 5 weeks. Last week I said it was going to be 4 weeks, but then early Monday morning when I looked at it, I realized that I didn't want to preach for like an hour at a time because I would get bored of me after an hour. So we're going to do 5 weeks, and we're going to cut it down to half an hour each. Does that sound good? All right, so the first thing is, I'm just going to be honest, feels a bit sad in the room. Yeah, I don't like sad. God's not sad, he's happy. And he's happy that you're here. So can everyone smile and look at your neighbor and smile at them? And can everyone look at me and smile at me? Oh, I can see teeth. Oh, I can see lots of teeth. There we go. Thank you. So I was going to say this, that sometimes church can, sometimes you can be like, oh, I just feel a bit sad right now. And I can tell you this, that God is a God of love and energy and passion and excitement, and he is so excited that you're here right now. And sometimes we need to realize that, and we need to be like, yeah, I'm excited I'm here right now. I'm excited I'm at church. That not many people can say that, if we're honest, in church. I'm really excited that I'm at church right now. Most of us look at it and like, oh, I'm going to church. But actually, tonight, you're at church. This is like the place to be on a Sunday night. Am I right? Okay, so as I'm talking, I would like you to be vocal back. And if I ask a question, please respond, either by waving your hands. Everyone practice waving your hands. There we go. Okay, so everyone can wave their hands. Perfect. And everyone say hello to me. All right, so everyone can talk. Okay, good. We have the foundation for actually a conversation. Yeah. All right, so turn in your Bibles to Luke 15. And today, all we're going to do is we're going to look at verses 1 and verses 2. So today is going to be setting up the rest of the 5 weeks. So the only context we have, the only information we have about what Jesus is saying through these 3 stories is 2 verses. So we're going to look at those 2 verses. But before I look at those verses, we need to understand that the next 3 stories, the lost sheep, the lost coin, and the lost son, they're parables. And if you don't have any idea what a parable is, what parables are, parables? Parables? Whatever you guys, I told you last week, don't be racist. I'm Canadian. Seriously, it hurts. Parables, parabolas, if we're French, fine. I have no idea if that's French for anything. So they're stories that Jesus uses to address not specific people that he's talking to, like in the specific context that they're in, but he's addressing issues of the heart. So the best way for Jesus to impact the most people is actually to share a story that everyone can relate to and connect with at the time. And as he shares that story and as he shares what the point of the story is actually deals with people's hearts and goes straight to people's hearts. And so it kind of cuts through the normal day-to-day life and you just receive something and we're going to read it in these next 3 weeks after this, each parable. And as you read it, you actually see that what God's doing is he's speaking very specifically to the people who were there. And he's doing it in such a way that he's holding these two groups, which we're just about to talk about, in this limbo and this tension. And it's amazing. I love two of my favorite chapters of the Bible are Luke 15 and Luke 18. And it's effectively the same thing done in two different chapters. And it's amazing because what Jesus is going to do is he's going to take two groups of people who seemingly are opposites and should in cultural times just hate each other, and he brings them together. He makes them realize the thing that they have in common is that they all need him. And so we're going to look at that today. So Luke 15, verses 1 and 2. And it says this: tax collectors and other notorious sinners often came to listen to Jesus teach. This made the Pharisees and teachers of religious law complain that he was associating with such sinful people, even eating with them. So that's the Bible for today. And we're really going to look into that and what that means. So what we need to know is we need to know who were tax collectors and notorious sinners. Notorious sinners sounds interesting. And then we also are going to look at who Pharisees were and the teachers of the religious law. Okay? All right. So we're going to look at who tax collectors were right now. So tax collectors, no one likes tax collectors. How many of you actually pay tax in the room? Can you just raise your hand? So the minority are paying for everyone right now. But imagine, you're welcome. I've paid a lot of tax since I've moved here to this country and have not really used the system either. I think I should get a bursary back, personally. I'm just saying that. Love and bless. Okay, fine. I give it away freely. So tax collectors. Tax collectors were actually, so they were Jewish, but they were seen as outcasts in Jewish culture. Why? Because they were, where Israel was at this time is they had a foreign government, a foreign empire come and take over and conquer their land and their nation. And they were called the Romans. And so the Romans, they did some really bad stuff to the Jews. And if you look in the Bible and you read some history books at how the Romans treated the Jews, it was actually really bad. And they did some really gruesome things. And tax collectors were Jews who paid the right to collect taxes. And so they were Jews themselves, but they associated themselves with the Romans, which would have been a really bad thing to do. Because the Romans were the people that were conquering them and were torturing them and killing them and persecuting them. But these select group of people, they paid for the right to take up taxes. And not only did they take up the correct amount of taxes, they actually added a bit of taxes on for themselves. And they actually made a lot of money robbing from people. And actually what would happen is the tax man, he would come up and he would knock on the door, he'd go to a business and he'd go, okay, knock, 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 and they'd open and he goes, hi, I'm the tax man, get ready to pay. And they'd say, okay, so taxes is this amount, you should be paying this amount, but actually you're going to pay this amount. So let's say your taxes for this year are £2,000, but actually it's going to cost you $3,000. And you're like, but why? And he goes, because I'm the tax man. But that's not fair. He's like, I know, but I'm a tax man. I'm not paying $3,000, I'm paying $2,000. He goes, well, you can pay $2,000 if you want, but I'm the tax man. And you see these guys behind me, and then Roman soldiers would walk up behind him, and then they'd say, well, you can pay me $2,000, but then these guys are going to imprison you. And so you can listen to me or you can go to jail. And if you go to jail and you actually don't have enough money to pay the full amount of taxes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sell your wife. Oh, and if she doesn't get as much money as I thought, I might just sell your kids as well. And then your land and property until all your taxes is paid, and then you can get released from jail, but you'll have nothing. But you can choose, it's your choice. So tax collectors weren't nice. Can we all agree? So imagine if a guy physically knocked on your door and tried to do that to you. You would not like that guy. He would not be like a close friend and buddy that you chat with. He might know you, you might know him, you might know his family, you might have some really close connections. But he fundamentally paid for the privilege to rob his family and his friends. He paid for the privilege to rip off his own people for his own gain. And he was seen as a social outcast. So tax collectors in the Bible they would be shunned. They would walk into a room, everyone would turn away. They would not be engaged at all. Why? Because they're hated so much for what they did. And then you have notorious sinners. So that sounds fun. Notorious sinners were people who had a blatant disregard for religious law and the regular law. So these people were people that would constantly go against the religious traditions which were set. And so imagine, let's say this is synagogue, and we're all here at synagogue. And let's say for this instance that there's a man standing up here and he is your rabbi. I won't say myself, because I don't want to be a rabbi. And then some guy walks in at the back with a bacon sandwich and starts eating a bacon sandwich and is like, guys, sorry to interrupt this meeting, but everyone needs to try this. Well, this is against Jewish tradition to have bacon, to have pork. But he's just like, no, you need to do this. You need to have this. And he just starts causing a ruckus in the people, annoying people who blatantly know the laws and the traditions that the Jews need to uphold and actively going against it. And not only actively going against it, they would actively go against the actual Roman law. And so they'd be breaking the law all the time. They were seen as people who disrespected anyone and everyone. These people were in and out of jail all the time. These two were social outcasts. These two were people who did not have any connection at all with regular society in Israel. They were the outcasts. They would walk into a room and everyone would turn away from them and blank them. They would say, hey, happy birthday, or hey, what's your name? And you'd literally just be like, and walk away from them. You would not engage in any way with these people because there's just this ingrown hatred towards these two groups of people. And what we find is this. Verse 1, tax collectors and other notorious sinners often came to listen to Jesus teach. That there's something that Jesus did which drew these social outcasts to him. And so the question we have to ask is why? Why was that happening? What was Jesus saying that was so engaging to these people that they flocked to him to hear him teach? What was he saying to them that was freeing and life-giving, that they wanted to be around him? In Colossians, the Apostle Paul, he has this is one of my favorite verses in the Bible as well. And I think he picks up on how Jesus lived his life. And it says this, Colossians 4, 5-6. It says, live wisely among those who are not believers and make the most of every opportunity. This is the most important bit. Let your conversation be gracious and attractive so that you will have the right response for everyone. That I think Jesus really knew what this meant. He knew how to have a gracious conversation. By Jesus physically talking to these people, he would have been seen as an outcast himself. Because it would have been so scandalous, the fact that this guy, this rabbi, this holy man, is engaging with the people that as a whole society, everyone else has chosen, we're not going to talk to them or look at them or notice them. They're dead to me. And Jesus is going, you're not dead to me. Come to me. I'll talk to you. I'm going to do more than talk to you. I'm going to give you life. And he speaks life to them. That if you read further on in the Bible, it describes God as perfect love. That who God is fundamentally is perfect love. And so when people connected with Jesus, when they engaged with him in a conversation, they had a glimpse of perfection, of perfect love. They had a glimpse of what it is to actually be accepted by someone, to be listened to. They had a glimpse of finding hope in that moment. Why? Because when they're around Jesus, he portrayed this love that was so powerful that it changed the world. The reason we're here today is because of Jesus. The reason we're gathering right now is literally because of the way he lived his life, and we can read about that in our Bible. And the greatest thing about it is what Jesus says is he says that all are welcome in his house. All are welcome. He says that everyone is created. We believe as Christians, everyone is created by God. And you're created to actually be in a family, to be in church. Church is people. Church is family. And actually, you were created to be in a family which portrays that same love. But how it's communicated, sometimes we have to be careful about. Because sometimes we can speak the truth, but we can do it in a non-loving way. That we can try and be right over trying to show someone that they're valued and cared for. That you can try and win the argument, but lose the person. And I think sometimes especially in church and in the past, that we have these conversations with people, and I've had these conversations with people who are Christians, and they were trying to convince me that God exists. Now, if they let me talk, I would have said, like, I'm on your side. But they were trying to convince me that God existed. And they were doing it in such a way that I was just like, listen, I believe in God, but I'm scared right now. Surely this isn't Jesus. Surely this isn't love. That I shouldn't feel scared. I shouldn't feel like you're trying to convince me. I shouldn't feel like I'm a commodity. I should feel like a person, shouldn't I? And actually, that's what Jesus is doing so well, which is why the people who are social outcasts were drawn to him, because he showed value, he showed respect, he showed care, he showed relationship to them. He showed them the things that they so desired, but they'd never received before. And this is a challenge that I want to throw out to people in this room who believe in Jesus. When you have conversations with people, does the overflow of your relationship with God pour out into those people? Do they know that the love that you're trying to convey to them isn't from you, but from something greater than you? If you had a conversation with someone and they were just asking about how you're doing and what's going on in your life, would they know that actually you believe in Jesus? Would they know that the way you live your life is so radically different than the world because you live it for someone? You live it for a relationship with Jesus Christ. Would they know that? That really got me this week. I wrote that. And as soon as I wrote that, God was just like, okay, you answer it yourself. I was like, oh, wow. I don't know. Sometimes, I hope. But I know that sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I'm just in a bad mood. I mean, like, how many of you have ever been in a bad mood? Raise your hands. No. Okay, look around. Look around with your hands up. This is a very freeing moment right now. Everyone's had a bad mood before. So you know what? Sometimes it's all right to be in a bad mood, but it's not all right to project that negativity and that hurt onto someone else. That's what's not okay. It's not okay if you're feeling upset to then project that frustration onto another person. Even if you feel upset, even if you're annoyed, even if you just had a really bad day, the foundation of what you do and where you give that to isn't someone else and you take it out on someone else. You actually go to God with it. Why? Because he is perfect love. And where you feel scared about something in your life, the Bible says that perfect love casts out all fear. And so when you connect with Jesus, who is perfect love, all fear should leave. All worry should leave. All frustration and anger should leave. Why? Because his perfect love is available to you, and all you have to do is talk to him. All you have to do is have a relationship with him, is get to know him. And that's just powerful. So the tax collectors and the notorious sinners, they were just social outcasts, but Jesus chose. Jesus was very specific with who he spent his time with. Jesus only lived to the age of 33, and he only really started doing stuff like in like a big, like, wow, supernatural, like Jesus is traveling the world for 3 years. So he had 3 years to change the world, and he did it. But that meant he had to be very specific about who he invested himself into and the time he gave to people and why he gave them that time. And I think it's really important that we understand that Jesus loved to spend time with the social outcasts, with the people who weren't accepted in society, with the people who had no hope, who felt repressed and did not know they were loved. That he loved spending time with those people because all he got to do was reveal his heavenly Father to them in a way that was gracious and attractive, that people wanted more when they left. Now, verse 2, halfway done, guys. It says this. This made the Pharisees and teachers of religious law complain that he was associating with such sinful people, even eating with them. That you had the current religious leaders, you had the Pharisees and teachers and rabbis. They just got really frustrated with Jesus. Because every time they saw Jesus, Jesus was hanging out with the people that they created a system and a way of living which meant they didn't have to connect with those people. That the very people who should have brought hope, brought freedom, and brought love into people's lives, disconnected from those people and lived amongst themselves. And that's wrong. That there's something that we have, the presence of God that's inside of all Christians, that's something powerful, and it's not just to stay inside of you. That the presence of God can't just be contained in one person. That he is so powerful, so loving, so life-changing, that the presence just can't help but flow out from you. That people will begin to see that you live differently the more you get to know God. They'll ask, why are you so peaceful all the time? Why we're all going through this time of panic and worrying, but you seem to not be panicking and worrying. Why? You seem to still be smiling. Why? You seem to not be worrying about your future. Why? And they begin to see that the way you live and the way you live your life and how you live your life is different. Why? Because you have a connection with God that is powerful. But the religious leaders, the teachers of the law, they lived their life in such a way that it was all for show, that it was superficial. If you have your Bibles, either flick to or find Matthew 23, because Jesus addresses the Pharisees and the religious people in a powerful way. And he says this, Matthew 23, we're going to start in verse 1. So in my Bible, the heading for this section is Religious Hypocrites Denounced. So this is what Jesus has to say about the Pharisees. Then Jesus spoke to the crowds and to the disciples. The scribes and the Pharisees are seated in the chair of Moses. Therefore, do whatever they tell you and observe it, but do not do what they do, because they don't practice what they teach. They tie up heavy loads that are hard to carry and put them on people's shoulders, but they themselves aren't willing to lift a finger, to move. They do everything to be observed by others. They enlarge their, I can't pronounce that word in my translation, so I'll describe it to you. They had these things that are attached to their arms where people could put prayers and stuff like that, and then they would pray. So they had these boxes. I'm trying to pronounce it in mine. Phylacteries. Phylacteries? All right, guys, let's be honest. I skipped a lot of school. That's effectively what flatteries were, that people could come in and they could they could give and then take something like a blessing away, and they could put prayers in. And so they would have these over-enlarged flatteries and lengthen their tassels. I'd like to have a coat with tassels on it. No, I wouldn't. No. No, yeah. They loved the place of honor at banquets, the front seats in the synagogues, greetings in the marketplaces, and to be called rabbi by people. But as for you, do not be called rabbi, because you have one teacher, and you are all brothers. Do not call anyone on earth your father, because you have one Father who is in heaven. And do not be called masters either, because you have one master, the Messiah. The greatest among you will be the servant. Whoever exalts himself will be humbled, but whoever humbles himself will be exalted. This is what this means. That if I come up to you and I have a conversation with you and I go, well, I'm your spiritual guru, so you better listen to me. I'm actually a father here. I'm a father in the house, which makes you my children, which means I'm above you. I'm a master, which means you're my apprentices. It's putting levels on things that don't need to be levels. It's making myself, trying to put myself ahead of other people just to make me feel good. That's all it was. That's the reason why they did it. Because actually when people look at you like, oh, look at you, ooh, and they put people on pedestals, like sometimes that can feel good. Sometimes it does. Like when everyone likes you and wants to get to know you, that can feel good. And you're like, oh, I like this. I like being here. Everyone wants to get to know me. Everyone's so friendly. But sometimes when we put labels on things like that and we try and walk around and saying, well, I'm a father in this house, and you need to respect me as a father, what we're actually saying is, you're my children, and you need to do whatever I say. And that's wrong. That we have one Father, and his name is God. We have one Master, and it is God. And we follow him. That we're brothers and sisters. That I do not want to elevate myself above you in any way that I'm trying to gain authority and power. That they would literally walk into like a banquet, like a massive feast, and whoever would host would sit at the end of the table. Whoever's house it was, they'd sit at the end, and they would naturally come and they would sit at the front. They would sit by the head of the table. Why? Because that's where the most honor was. So the further you're away from the person who hosted the party, the less important you were in that party. But actually later on in Matthew, what it talks about is this. It says, go to the end of the table. Sit at the end. Because won't it be amazing when they notice you at the end and they call you forward, rather than asking the person who's sitting at their left and to their right to go to the end? But sometimes the religious leaders, the Pharisees, the teachers of the law, perverted the love that God so wanted them to give out to others. They misused it. When you pervert love and you make it into a commodity to either gain status or to gain or to abuse others, to use them in a way which they weren't meant to be used, it disrespects yourself and it disrespects the love that you're trying to give. That perfect love casts out all fear. So any love that someone is trying to give you in any form where you're feeling scared or you feel like you're a commodity and you're not a person is being perverted in that moment. And that's not how Jesus wants us to live in any way. Why? Because his love is perfect. And to even say that, I don't even know what that means. Because I haven't received his perfect love in a way that I can fully understand him. Why? Because he's God. He created literally everything. He did. And I can't comprehend that sometimes, but I have a faith where I believe that he will show me and reveal his love to me each and every day. And the same thing is for you, that you can receive a love from God each and every day that is new, that is exciting, that is deep, that is meaningful. that is personal to you. Why? Because he loves you so much. The reason why we're starting with these two verses is because we need to see what's going on. You have two groups of people who are gathered in front of Jesus. You have on one side the social outcasts, and then you have on the other side the seen social elite, the religious leaders. And Jesus is going to talk to them very bluntly in these next parables. He's going to speak to them directly, and he's going to call out things in their hearts on both sides. And as we go on with this series, what you're going to find is there's going to be moments where the tax collectors and notorious sinners, they feel for once this aha moment where like, I can be accepted. There is a way for me to be accepted. There is a way for me to feel loved. See, I am valued. And then there's moments where the Pharisees are going, see, I am doing something right, aren't I? I am doing something right. See, and Jesus is playing these two parties back and forth in a way that what he's doing is he's breaking down their barriers. He's breaking down their walls, and he's dealing with their heart. And so tonight what I want to do is I want to just set a foundation for what we're going to be looking at the next 4 weeks. But at the same time as this, do you know that you can receive perfect love? Do you know that you were created to receive perfect love? Do you know that you were created to be in a relationship with Jesus Christ? Do you know that you were created in a way which meant you're supposed to not only give, just give out of yourself, you're supposed to give out of an overflow? Do you know that you were made for more than just normal life? Do you know that if you feel lost, if you feel in any area of your life, I just feel lost, I don't know where I'm going, I don't know what I'm doing, that you can be found, that you can find purpose in your life, that you can find value in your life, that you can find meaning in your life. And that's only going to happen with Jesus. And it is his pleasure and his honor to show up and to enter into a relationship with you.